Good afternoon, everyone. We're very excited to welcome you to this afternoon's webinar. My name is Katie Rowley. I'm with the NOAA Central Library, and I will be the webinar host today. A few logistical things to go over. If you are having any audio or visual issues with your computer, please try logging out of the webinar and back in. That usually fixes most of those issues. If you do have any further issues, please just put them in the chat and I will try to troubleshoot that for you. We are taking questions during this, but if you don't mind putting them in, we will get to them at a Q&A portion at the end. And with that, I'm going to introduce our speakers today. Today we have Dr. Gerry Coffee, who is the OAR Awards Program Manager. He has worked for Deloitte, the Dept of Treasury, and several other federal agencies. His expertise is in qualitative and quantitative analysis with a specialty in building data collection instruments. And we also have Darryl Thomas, who has been with the NOAA Office of Human Capital Services, Human Capital Strategies Division Centers of Expertise for 4 years. He's currently NOAA's Awards and Recognition Program Manager. Prior to coming to NOAA, he retired from the U.S. Navy after serving 20 years. He holds a bachelor's in World Lit, a master's in computer, I'm guessing, Darryl? Management and MBA. Ah, there it is. All the acronyms. An MBA in Organizational Psychology and Development, Lean Six Sigma Green and Black Belts, Workforce Development Professional Certification, HCI Workforce Planning Certification, and currently is pursuing his doctorate in Management and Organizational Development. So you have two very well-rounded experts to present today on what you didn't know about the DOC Bronze Award. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our speakers.
First, we want to thank everybody today for coming out and participating in this. We are so super excited to tell you more about awards at the line office level, but also at the NOAA level and the departmental level. And this particular award that we're going to discuss today, as Katie said so eloquently, what you didn't know about the DOC Bronze Award. So what I want you to do is sit back, enjoy, have a good time. Feel free to ask questions. We don't want to bore you to sleep. We want you to keep you engaged, interactive in the process, but we really want to tell you about things that most people didn't know, and I hope that I'll be able to demystify any of the topics that are associated with the DOC Bronze Award to a point where we're able to easily converse about it and help you and assist you along the way and support you with sending in award-winning nominations. So that's always the goal. Next slide. So when you think about the DOC Bronze Award, this presentation is designed to be informative and engage the dialogue with all of the NOAA Awards POCs, all of the individuals that write awards, directors, especially with a focus in not only laboratories, but also divisions that support NOAA, especially some of our divisions that people don't automatically think when they're thinking about the DOC Bronze Award. They may think, oh, it's more about research, more about science base of that. But sometimes we also forget that there's a huge community that supports all of our science and research partners in the field and in the main offices, and that those people are essentially involved in the awards process too, or should be involved in those nominations. But I want to also give two quick disclaimers as we go through before we get started and we move through, as myself and Darryl will be your guides throughout the whole presentation. First disclaimer, this presentation is based upon a combination of facts, DOC approved information, and best practices. So we don't want to be sued or held liable for anything just because we are just wanting to give you the very best and most forthright information as possible. So we want to do that. Please consult your line or staff office awards POC for more information and guidance. You can also consult NOAA Awards as well. The other last disclaimer is I have a computer that has a fan motor issue, so it will sound like there is a flock of ducks or geese around here squealing in the background. Just be advised, no animals were harmed in the creation of this presentation and while it's going on. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. So let's go and just talk briefly about what we think we know about what the DOC Bronze Medal is. And it basically recognizes 3 different parts of the organization: individuals as individual contributors, groups of people, which could be a combination of groups from different line offices or a group within different divisions within one line office, and the organization, which is essentially the line office itself, or a joint combination of those for federal employees with superior performance. This is also the highest honor that can be granted by the Undersecretary for Oceans and Atmosphere. The program is managed by NOAA with oversight by the Department of Commerce. So they definitely provide us information on when there are changes, updates to forms, when they change guidelines or requirements, and those types of administrative challenges that may come down, or those administrative changes that are frequently made at the top level. As an annual award ceremony is always held in Silver Spring, honoring the recipients and their accomplishments to NOAA and the DOC mission. So we will always have it in Silver Spring at NOAA's headquarters. Next slide.
Except for this year, except for this year though.
Except for this year, we will not tell you what we're going to do, but we won't be in the office. I'll tell you that. So when we think about categories, and this is sometimes I've gotten questions as a POC, and you try to manage the program with fairness and integrity. And my supervisor, Andrea Arnold, has been very supportive in the process. We always talk about managing with integrity. And a lot of times there are categories that people aren't really aware of. They see it on the form, but they don't quite make the nexus of how it makes sense. And so with those things, with that in mind, we're going to talk about the categories, and we're going to start with leadership. And I'm not going to read through the chart because everybody can read through these charts, and I don't want to bore you to tears. But when you think about leadership, this one specifically focuses on personal leadership and management of an organization that produce sustainable and innovative achievements resulting in high quality service to the agency. Something that we have changed, something that we have re-engineered, we have modified, and now it works better. So that's one of the main takeaways for leadership. Darryl, you want to add anything with leadership?
When you're looking at, again, like I said, you're looking at leadership, when you look at all of the aspects of it, not just the person that's supposedly organizing everything, but also how it's being done, and why it's being done. So that's one of the key essential things is that if you do decide to elect somebody in that particular category, try to look at them as a whole, not just because they're in that position.
And one of the other things that you may look at on this slide, and we will definitely be able to provide this slideshow and information after this presentation. There's a section that it says achievements may include, but are not limited to these other opportunities or lists below that have things such as leadership that models and rewards behaviors conducive to the effective management of diversity. That's definitely something that's on everybody's mind as we're moving through COVID-19 and through this period of time, managing with the emphasis on diversity. Also, the next category is personal and professional excellence. And this recognizes, I'm sorry, I had my thing, it was a little block there. It recognizes those who demonstrate an outstanding level of accomplishment in furthering the agency's mission. And, this could look at legal, trade, labor relations management, information technology, something that an individual or group of people or the organization really decided to review, sort of demystify some of the perhaps errors or inaccuracies in that particular system or process, and being able to affirm that they have cleaned it up, for lack of better words, or edited it, and so that it now works in a better process to be able to provide more substantial evidence, more substantial positive customer feedback, such as those things. Next slide. Our next category is probably one of the categories that we get the most awards in at NOAA, because we are a science research organization, and that is scientific and engineering achievement. And this recognizes scientific and engineering or technological breakthroughs. And NOAA has completed a lot over many, many, many decades. And as you can see, there's a list of those breakthroughs that include, but there are some that also are not limited to. And when you think about opening up new fields of inquiry, redefining major issues of investigation and contribution to the body of knowledge. Also, you know, as a researcher, independent researcher myself, you always want to further the discipline. So that's another thing as we're looking at this, furthering the discipline in science and atmospheric research, and even also to include oceans. The next category will be organizational change, and this basically recognizes those whose accomplishments contribute to creating organizational culture that is consistently learning and growing, that maximizes employee potential and fosters high ethical standards. And those achievements are not limited to, but also being widely recognized as an individual whose capabilities and relationships have had a direct or positive impact on the career development and significance of others. And I know as a federal servant for almost 15 years, it has happened to me, and I could definitely think of some of those cultural developments or organizational developments as I mix both of those together that have definitely made a career impact on myself. Darryl, do you want to add more to that one?
No, pretty much you've covered a lot of it.
I think when I look at organizational development, one of the things I think of specifically, and Darryl, you can correct me about this particular item, but Nicole Mason and Dr. Candace Boyd and a few others, Georgia Madrid, came up with the Women of NOAA hashtag. And to me, that was very much an organization development. It sort of falls within those guidelines. And that was a winning award under the administrative side, but also I think it could have fallen in place right here in organizational development. Next slide.
Yeah.
The next category is customer service, one of my big and most favorite things. Recognizing those who provide or foster a culture that nurtures world-class customer service. Achievements in that may include, but not are limited to, activities related to establishing measurements and standards for improving service, which I've already touched on, and implementing and consistently assessing performance against standards, which from my old Deloitte days would be CPI, which is continuous process improvement. Also, accomplishments are expressed in measurable terms such as cycle time, cost reduction, increased courtesy, and quality to customers. And I've seen quite a number of those types of nominations come through. And the customer service category is a category that is actually spanned throughout many of our awards that we offer here at NOAA, including the Administrators Awards, Employee of the Years, and things of that nature. That particular category is spread across as an option for many different awards. The next category is administrative and technical support. And this one is a great category. This is something that NOAA would not be the organization it is and the great organization it is without the administrative and technical support team to support all of the research that is going on. This particular award recognizes those who demonstrate an outstanding level of accomplishment in providing administrative service and technical support. It's not limited to advancing the goals of the team and office, division, operating unit, department, or outstanding performance, creative or innovative problem solving, and developing new systems, methods, and procedures. Pretty much everything that I've just talked of in the previous categories, but this one is a category specifically for that when you want to take an opportunity to look at what's going on in your particular line office, your particular division, your particular office, and how is it advancing the agenda forward. Next slide. Our last category is heroism, and this was probably one of the categories that is probably least frequently used. Would you agree, Darryl?
Actually, not necessarily. I think what a lot of people get confused about this particular category is that they don't understand what the concept of heroism is. And it's, when we're looking at heroism, it's not just a feat that someone does, but it's their action that they've taken. An example of one particular award of heroism that was done was a few years ago when I first got here. There was a young lady who received the Heroism Award for pulling 5 people out of a burning car. However, there was another person who received the Heroism Award for not only saving supplies and equipment, but stopping the flooding in a particular area, which actually helped to save people's lives as well. So it's the concept of you're volunteering, basically you're volunteering to do something, and you're putting yourself in ultimately in harm's way. So it's not necessarily the idea of heroism being something on a Superman level, but it could be just as simple as making sure property and property is not damaged, or a person's not damaged, or a person's not hurt.
Absolutely. And so when we think about heroism, we think about recognizing a special one-time service or act of heroism by an employee or group of employees, even a team that is in the public interest or connected with the related to official employment. Heroism is defined as exhibiting courage, daring, and self-sacrifice. Not one of those people who takes out the popcorn in the microwave before it gets burned and it burns, it smells up the whole office. Not heroism, but we appreciate that in the office.
Yeah, that's an act of kindness. That's not heroism.
Just a little NOAA Awards humor for the people, making sure everybody's still on board with us. All right, next slide.
Okay, so one of the things that a lot of people always ask about was when we're looking at the types of bronze awards that we have. And mainly the bronze awards come in 3 different areas, as Gerry had mentioned earlier. The bronze award can be, a nomination can either be an organizational type award, a group award, or an individual award. With the organizational award, we have to look at just as you said, as an organization itself. And examples of that could be either the full organization, which prime example would be OAR, or if you're looking at a particular group in the organization, for mine, it would be the Center of Expertise. Or if you were looking for something even smaller than that, it could be a branch. So that's when you're looking at the aspect of organization. When you submit the organization award, it can be submitted in 2 ways. One, by identifying that individual organization itself, hence OAR, or a combination of up to 3 of the 3 I had mentioned. So it could be, and it could be a combination of those from various line officers. So it could be mixed in that way as well. And what I mean by that is you could have the organization itself, OAR. You could have operational units such as a branch, and then you can have an even smaller part of it, which is a division. All 3 of those can actually be submitted on one organizational award. When we're looking at the group awards themselves can have, we're talking about individual names. And you can have up to 10 names per DOC instruction per nomination. And of course, the last one is the individual itself, which you just have only one person name on the award. Now, the funny thing I have noticed that some people try to sneak in, it's like, well, I have 9 names, and then all of a sudden they may have something like the fire team. In actuality, that's what you call mixing of groups, and that's something that you actually can't do. So when you're submitting the nomination, it either has to be fully identified as an organizational type nomination, a group type nomination, or an individual type of nomination. All right, next slide. So how does the whole process start when it comes to actually talking about the bronze medals? First thing goes out is we do a call for all nominations, and that's done NOAA-wide. And so what that does is that normally a request is sent out at the beginning of the year. And with that request, it actually helps the line officers set their deadlines to when awards have to be at their particular PMAX or their reviewing boards. So once the call goes out, the particular line and staff offices set their deadline dates to which all the nominations have to be in. Then those nominations go to their reviewing staff. And then finally, the ones that are approved by the individual PMAC boards come to me, your Awards and Recognition Program Manager. Next slide. Now, the fun part begins. So once I receive them, this is where all of the processing comes in at. And sometimes some people receive these interesting phone calls or emails. And what it entails is that all of the awards and nominations already come on a standard form. However, some people feel as though, maybe we need to change a few things. When in fact, there's a reason why they are set at a particular standard. So once I receive the nominations, we go through the whole process of actually reviewing and evaluating. First thing we do is make sure that we have the right type of award, whether or not it's going to be an organizational type of award, a group award, or an individual. If those information isn't correct, then nomination is actually rejected, sent back for corrections. Next thing we do is always make sure, and I don't know why, but a lot of people like to put their nicknames on nominations. Unfortunately, that's not a good thing to do. We have to have your actual name that you use in order to get your job. So therefore, whatever name you use in OPM is the one that we have to have on the award. So even though your nickname may be Bo, Ronald and your actual name is Ronald would actually be the thing that we approve, that will be approved for the award. If we do get information like that, the award is actually automatically rejected and sent back. If there's a problem with that person having an issue of having their real name put on there, then a few things can happen. One, their name can actually be completely removed from the nomination, or two, the nomination can actually be completely withdrawn by the agent, the nominators themselves. The other thing that we also have to make sure is that you have a legal email. And what I mean by legal email is we're talking about a government email. None of the Gmail emails and things that are normally accepted. However, there are some cases where a person may have retired and that's their only point of contact, or the person may have actually left the organization and decided to take another position. If they've done that, then at that point in time, then those type of emails are accepted. The main reason that we have to have a correct email is because once we're going through everything, and we have to be able to identify you, we also have to be able to contact you. If you receive an award and all of a sudden you see the announcement, you see your name, and I have heard this, so I don't understand why no one ever told me that I won this award. Well, mainly because you didn't give us the correct email address. So it's important and it's vital that the email, the information that we ask and request is actually put down there correctly. One thing that I love about my job, and that always makes me laugh, is when I see a nomination and for some strange reason, we have people that decide they want to reformat them. The main reason that the format is so important is because not only do the board see these nominations, but these nominations actually go up through the DUSO's office as well as to the undersec himself. And in some cases, he actually reads a lot of the nominations. So if the presentation of the nomination and the nomination form itself is actually a representation of you as well. So if I get a nomination, you've had 5 different people to work on it, and each person has gone through, done a section, but decided to put that section in another color, that's not necessarily a good representation or a good showing of making sure that you paid attention to the main rule. And that's understanding to keep the format the same way. Another thing we have to look at is the character count. There's a real reason, a specific reason on why we have the character count the way it is. And that's mainly because of the way that the nomination goes into other systems. And those systems have a specific set character count. Also, some of these nominations can, and in some cases are nominated to be, to go up for other awards that are external to NOAA. And in those cases, their nomination forms have particular character counts that we have to follow. So it is vital that you pay attention to just those small little details, and that actually do make a difference in being able to make sure your message is actually got across, but not in some cases, you may not need to learn, you may not need to have your message go across in so many words. Now, the last part that I always have questions about is how do you know who can actually, who will actually get an award and who won't? It's simple. What we do is we do a thing called a good standards check. Now, the good standards check is just that. It's sent to four different departments. It's sent to OIG, security, labor relations, and also to EEO. Now, what they're doing is that they're looking to make sure that all the people that are nominated for the award are just that, not in any trouble, not in any investigations. Because we have to look at this, you are a representation of the organization if you receive this award. So, and coming to the point of when we're doing a good standards check and something has come up, again, 3 things can happen. First things first is that the administrator for the particular office is contacted, and we let him know not what the issue is, but that an issue did come up. So after they're nominated, after that information is given to him, then that person, that administrator, will have 3 choices. He or she can say, well, this person is fine. This happened in a particular at a later. That's happened years ago. It's just still on the record, but you know the whole issue's been cleared. Second choice I have is that I can be instructed to remove their name from the nomination, and the third choice that they'll have is to completely remove the nomination as a whole. So in essence, when you have some people that when you have a nominator that sends up a nomination but notices that it may have been changed. Those are some, or some people names have been changed. That may be some of the reasons that that nomination has changed. So,
Darryl,
yes.
pop quiz. Let me ask you a question because I know the audience out here is dying to ask you this question. So when you think about good standings check, what happens if there's a person who submitted for on a nomination and they're actually being vetted? Everyone loves the nomination. It's groundbreaking research, and something comes back on the good standings check. Is there a fourth option where the line, let's say the AA for the line office says, I really want this research to go forward because it's groundbreaking, it's going to put NOAA in a great light. We will be able to achieve these things and partner with other people. Can we switch that nomination to a group or to a organizational nomination and just so that way it's more of the particular line office versus that one person? Is that acceptable?
That would be acceptable because at that point in time, you're no longer singling out that particular person. You're saying that this is the work that was done by the office. Now, there is a little slippery slope when it comes to things like that. One, all parties would have to be on board with it. If not, then there is a possibility of an EEO complaint being filed against the organization, or even possibility of that person could get to the point where they feel as though that they're not being represented. So while you're asking that, there is also another choice. The nomination can be pulled, and you can also have that person just continue doing their work until they are cleared, until where they actually can be at a point to where they're good standards. At that point in time, if the organization feels, oh, you know, the work is still on the groundbreaking and is definitely noteworthy, go ahead and submit it, but just submit it at a later date.
Okay, thanks.
Not a problem. Okay, next slide. So once we're going back, once we have everything prepared, all of the information is sent to the NIAB, which is actually the NOAA Incentive Awards Board. The NOAA Incentive Awards Board is made of representatives from each of the line offices and one representative that represents all of the corporate office or staff offices. So in essence, there's about 7 people that are on this board, and normally senior people, who will go through, read the nominations, and then they'll score the nominations from 1 to 5. So after they've scored the nominations from 1 to 5, 5 being the best, 1 being, okay, it needs a lot more work. That information is then sent back to me, and then I take an average. Next slide, please. So now, when the board is actually looking at their nominations, this is the big secret a lot of people are always wondering is like, you know, what is actually, how do they go through and their scoring? When actually they have a matrix that they do follow. With this matrix, as I mentioned, 5 being the best, and with 5, it really being, you're able to understand the nomination of matter who reads. It was very well written. The information and the impact, it's fully seen, is fully understood without any issues. And then the numbers start to dwindle if certain aspects are met. So you know that there's an impact on the mission, but it may not have been as strong of an impact on a mission. It may be on NOAA missions, but not necessarily DOC. So when you're looking at that, that's how they're actually scoring it. You know, and then the most important thing is that, you know, you read it, if they read a nomination and it just reads as though just somebody wrote it. So and it doesn't tell them anything about the impact. It doesn't tell them anything about whether or not it has an effect on the mission, or the nomination really has an impact, but it's only at the line office level. It's not at the NOAA level. So those are the type of things that you have to really do pay attention to when you're actually writing the nominations. So as I mentioned before, it is on a scoring system of 5 to 1, 5 being the best, and 1 more or less you can say being limited or not necessarily going up to the level of either NOAA or DOC. Next slide. All right, once everything is tallied up, there's a nice little median number that they look for with the nominations. So on an average, if the nomination score is a 3.6 or above on that scale of 1 to 5, and then the board can decide, okay, you know what, these have actually met all of our standards that we need. These can go forward. However, there may be some information that may be needed more, so the board would actually request for that. If a nomination scores below that, when the board has their physical meeting, that's where they start discussing, well, you know, this is a good nomination. However, it was missing this. You know, is it possible that we can send it back and they can explain this to us? Or this was a good nomination, but it's just not right. You could tell that the research isn't there yet. Or the worst thing could be is that it's not recommended because it's just not a good write-up. It doesn't say anything. It just doesn't tell us anything. So those, when you're writing those nominations, key things that you want to think about is that, you know, are we answering those questions? Next slide. So what makes a good nomination? Really, it's two things. It has to have a clear story and also has the impact. What I mean by a clear story is that what a lot of people don't realize is that our board is actually a diverse board. Now, a diverse board is that it's basically of scientists and non-scientists. So not everyone will understand the language of your peers. So you have to be able to understand the language of the audience. And the audience, that is a diverse and broad. So make sure that when you're making that, when you're writing that nomination, make sure that it's not complex. You're not going too deep into the science of it, to where, yes, everyone in your community understands it, but I don't, and I'm a board member. So that's the key thing you want to also be able to answer that so what question. And what I mean by that so what question is like, yes, this is groundbreaking work, but why is it groundbreaking work? Why is it so important? Why does this nomination deserve to be recognized? So that's one of the things you have to really, really think about and make sure you're emphasizing that point and try not to do it in so many words. Because you always have to be a key to stay within your character count. Also, you have to make sure that the nomination that you're submitting has the connection to not only NOAA's mission, but the DOC's strategic plan. Those are the key vital aspects of any nomination, showing how they actually relate to the mission and DOC strategic plan. Relating to the NOAA missions will get you high points. However, showing how it relates to both the NOAA strategic and mission plan and DOC's will actually get you the ultimate points and higher scores. Next slide. So let's look at some of the bronze myths or facts. And if you've really been paying attention, these questions will be really, really easy to answer. So first question, is this a myth or fact? That the bronze is actually recognized in individual groups, organizations, or joint. All the people have to be federal, and the Undersecretary of NOAA is the one who can award this, as well as this program is governed by NOAA but oversighted by DOC. So is this a fact or a myth? What do you think, Gary?
We should ask them to put it in the chat box because we can see it real time if you put it in the chat box. Is this a fact or a myth? So if you want to play along with us, please put it in the chat box what you may think it is.
Okay, this is Katie, and the chat is coming into me with almost everyone believing it is a fact. I've got a couple myths.
Okay, let's go and go to the next slide. It is actually a fact. The bronze medal is actually one of the key things that it recognizes all the above. The bronze medal is actually governed by NOAA. It's oversighted by DOC, so the person who has full authority over the bronze medal is actually our undersecretary. The nice thing about the bronze medal is that he really can award as many as he wants. It's not limited. So don't be scared to submit those nominations. A lot of people think, oh, well, it's the bronze medal is like the gold and the silver. True enough, they mirror each other as far as the different categories, and as far as groups, and especially when it comes to the rules. However, the total number that can be given out are totally different. That is totally up to the undersecretary. He can give out 1 or he can give out 200. And actually, he has given out 200 before, but that's just between me and you. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next question.
The bureaus are prohibited from automatically granting a bronze medal to an individual, group, or organization that was not recommended for a gold or silver medal. Myth or fact? Type it in.
Okay. This time we have much more myth than fact. A few myths with a question mark after them.
All right.
Got two facts. Oh, 3 facts. Mostly myth though.
All right.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and go to next slide.
It is a myth.
Yeah, it didn't pop up though.
It didn't pop up on the screen.
Oh, I'm seeing it here. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Now we
yes.
see it.
Yeah, that is correct. It is a myth. As I mentioned before, the bronze medal is governed by NOAA. Now, when it comes to the gold and silver, if an organization submitted a gold or silver, believe it or if a prime example, a 9 office submitted a nomination for gold, it gets to the NIAB. The NIAB decide, you know what? It doesn't exactly meet the level of a gold, but it meets the level of a silver. The final decision for all of this is up to the undersec. That award can actually go to the undersec, and he look at it and says, you know what? I understand that you feel as though this is that. However, I'm going to grant this a bronze right now, and we'll go ahead and include this in the next ceremony. He has the authority to do that. So it is a myth that it's automatically done. It's not automatically done. It has to go through a process in order to be decided. All right. And our last question, bronze medals not only can be granted annually cycle in which the accomplishment was completed. And that didn't sound right. You try reading that again. Bronze medals may only be granted in an annual cycle in which the accomplishment was completed. So is that a fact or a myth?
Oh, this one is much more mixed. We've got quite a few facts and quite a few myths. I think you may have stumped everyone here. There's
Oh, wow.
Very good.
I'd like to call a lifeline. Can I call a friend over at DOC?
They're going to send you back to us. Come on now.
There's a very good mix right here, back and forth, fact and myth. You've definitely bamboozled everyone.
All right, let's go to the next slide. It is a myth. Unlike the gold and silver nominations, the gold and silver nominations have a particular time period within the year of that particular one. With the bronze, however, it's when the award comes to fruition. So it may be within that year, it may take 5 years. The research may have started 10 years ago, but it did not get the results that you needed until now. So as far as it being within that particular cycle, that's a myth. It's when it's the nomination that the work is noteworthy, and 2, when they feel as though everything has come to fruition that it needs to be recognized, or not necessarily need, but strongly want to be recognized.
Next slide. So when you're thinking about how to get your nomination past your line office, this is a question that we received quite a bit in OAR and wanting feedback. And I want to just pivot back to something else that Darryl spoke about earlier. And a lot of people ask about feedback. And in certain line offices, certain organizations, it may be written into their bylaws or their regulations or policy. But I know that at the NOAA level, they do like to provide feedback. And so they do reach back out to tell you what may have gone awry in this nomination or why it did not move forward. So when you're thinking about getting it past your own line office, ask yourself a few things. Number one, engage yourself and engage the awards POC. If you're not the awards POC or involved with the awards POC, you're in the field, in the lab, on a boat, I recommend reaching out to that person, talking to the person, ask them, what have you seen in best practices? Can you give me examples of one that have won? You can also reach out to NOAA Awards. They will definitely get you examples of ones that are won. And we're not saying by any means cut and copy and paste job. What we're saying is using the format, the logic, and the understanding in this one, it will help to demystify questions that you may have where you can say, hey, I have something at least to base my nomination off of in terms of its factuality, its storytelling, because at the end of the day, these nominations basically tell a story. And the story that you tell is in its movement of how well this nomination goes and who it goes to, and if they vote on it very well and send it forward, is how great of a storyteller did you tell a story. It might have been a really great story, it might have been not that great story, but the impact was really great, but the technical portions of it may be sort of tedious to a non-technical person. So it's all about the presentation of the story. As for opportunities, as I said again, to provide feedback. 2, develop an intern. If you don't have it now, and I know in other line offices and other labs and even divisions and smaller offices, develop an internal office or lab awards committee. That will be helpful. So when we're starting to write these nominations, we get a fresh set of eyes. We vet it through a couple of people and say, hey, what do you think about this? How does this work? Is this meeting the mark? Do you think this impact is significant, far-reaching? Is the ripple effect there? And that'll give you sort of a baseline of where you are, where you can learn to either increase and substantially change sections of your nomination. Also looking again at your character counts and saying, although we started out really big, now we can really hone in and really dismiss or modify some of the information that's in the nominations. And I said, and the second part of it, again, is ensure multiple sets of eyes see the nominations before they go even to your line office POC. Make sure that people are looking at it. This is not esoteric work, generally speaking. We're all civil servants. We're not working at the CIA where everything is, very, very hush-hush and we can't circulate information. This is a lot of positive and outstanding research that we're doing. The last part is time. Time is not always on your side. Begin and draft your nominations early and often. Engage again, as I keep saying, the POC. Let that person know, hey, we're thinking about drafting this. Here's a baseline. What do you think? Where can we beef up these areas? Does this section really have teeth in it? Think about the future calls for nominations that are actually going to be coming out. So I try to, at least in our particular line office of OAR, give a substantial amount of time for these nomination calls, because we know that the bulk of the nominations in any line office, you're going to get them the week of, 2 days before, the day of, at the stroke of midnight before before you turn off the lights. And so we recognize people work very involved schedules. So we want to make sure that we give enough time and and friendly, gentle reminders saying, hey, just so you know, we're still accepting nominations today. We haven't forgot about it. Please send in your nomination. Next slide. We have now come to the end. We have about 17 minutes left. We wanted to make sure we leave enough time. Please ask all the questions that you want. And we want to be able to utilize the last 15 minutes or so of this time to answer questions, talk to the public about it, and be as informative and supportive as possible. Katie will field all the questions, ask us, and myself or Darryl, or even both of us, will be answering questions.
And one of the things also that I do want to go ahead and say is that I know that with some of the staff offices, they feel as though it's really hard for them to get nominations in or to get people to nominate. Believe it or not, a person people in your office just knowing that you're nominating for something actually helps with morale. And it also shows them that you do care about the job that they're doing and that you want to see if you can actually make sure that they're seen, that they're heard, and that it's understood that they have a vital part. They play a vital part within the mission of the organization. So, don't feel, well, we shouldn't submit it. It won't hurt. The only way it hurts if you don't try.
And don't be discouraged if you don't win. If you don't win, it's nothing to be discouraged about. It's an honor and a privilege to be even nominated for that award, to go all the way to the top of NOAA or to DOC or to the White House or to an external organization. It is a win in itself to be even nominated, to be considered for the level of high quality work that we do. Yeah. Katie, any questions so far?
We do have several questions.
Good.
Okay.
Thank
Fire
you.
away.
So the first question is, Can only FTEs nominate? As a long-term contractor, would I be able to nominate FTEs or an FTE group?
Actually, with all of the federal programs, only federal can nominate. So by being a contractor, unfortunately, you can't nominate them. However, you can work with someone on the federal staff to have that staff nominated.
Thank you. Okay, next question. What options are there for line office awards if the group is not applicable for a DOC award?
Well, that's a good question. Well, with each of the line offices, they actually do have their individual award programs. Some of them right now, we're in the process of even establishing even more. The best bet is to actually touch bases with your line office's awards program manager to find out exactly what awards that line office has. I'm going to discover there are some line offices who have awards that they've been doing for years, but never had an SOP. So we're trying to fix that too as well. But it's the idea that they do have the individual ones. So just reach out to them to see exactly what they have in that office, and you can go from there. Next year, we're going to be one of the things that on the NOAA level that we will be pushing is we're also going to start pushing some of the external awards as well. So be on the lookout for those too.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Since the nominations should support DOC and/or NOAA strategic plans, can you insert links to the current plans into the nomination form?
You know, that is a good question. In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. And the main reason that sometimes we would say yes to go ahead and include the links, it all depends, because with the formats that we use, in some cases where I have to cut and paste and actually put all the information in particular areas, the links won't work.
Gotcha. Okay, next question. If you have a group of 11 people, is there any way that you can nominate the whole group? In this particular instance, it's a cross-line office group, so it wouldn't work to nominate their organization.
Actually, the nice thing about it is that NOAA really did think about this years and years ago. Within NOAA for the Bronze Award, there is a special condition in which you can ask for an exemption. And with that exemption, you really have to justify it, and it has to be informal and goes through the entire chain along with the nomination, justifying why that extra person needs to be on there. I have actually seen this is kind of mean, but I actually, for the undersec himself, he had to justify why he wanted additional people on a nomination, that even though he was going to approve it, but he still had to follow the same rules. So it's not just limited just to the line offices, it's limited to it's actually governed by everyone.
And I think it also depends on that nomination as well. Like for administrators award, you can have as many people as you want, right? Versus a DOC nomination.
Right. However, that's only with the bronze. Keep that in mind. It is only with the bronze. With the gold and silver, and I know that we haven't talked about that, you cannot exceed that 10 margin.
Good to know. Thank you. Next question. Does NOAA keep a record of past successful nominations?
Yes, we do. And easiest way that I actually can explain that is like this. When we send out the nominations that won, each of the line offices has a copy of those nominations. In some cases, we only go so far back. I will tell you that. The database that I have only goes back to, I think, for nominations, I only have them back to maybe 2007, maybe 2007, maybe 2008. But prior to that, they didn't keep them. If you're looking for a specific type or style, again, contact your POC, because they do have a copy of the list of the nominations that won, and they have to have a copy of the nominations submitted because they had to send it to me.
Good to know. Thank you. Since this is a non-monetary award, can contractors be included in the nomination?
No, contractors cannot. Even though it's a non-monetary award, it's still a federal award. Now, a key thing that a lot are not understanding is that, unfortunately, all of the types of awards we have are federally funded award programs. So that's one of the main reasons why we can't have a contractor submitted with the award. So whether it's non-monetary or monetary, contractors cannot be included on any federal award.
Good to know. Next question. How do you communicate failed nominations to staff that were nominated in that nomination, or do you not do that?
No, it's not a failed nomination, and because in a lot of cases now, what we're doing is that we're recommending, I've asked the board to give a little bit more detail on why the nomination didn't go through, and so with that, we actually do give a statement. Then we also give them recommendations to, resubmit. If the work was good, it may have been too early. You may not have enough data on it. And we do have some board members that really do know about the nominations, because a lot of times they sit on the PMAX for their particular line of staff offices. So they do know something about the nominations that come up. And there was one nomination I actually saw. I thought it was pretty good. However, the board member himself said, no, this is actually, they're missing a whole lot that needed to be in this nomination. They didn't include this work, and this work. So they explained why they wouldn't recommend it to go forward. But they also took the initiative to send all the information back with that nomination to that POC, the awards POC for that particular office, to let them know, you can resubmit this for possibly one of the other awards that we do offer, but you may want to actually consider including this in it as well, in order to give that impact that that award had, that nomination had.
I think for me, Darryl, when we have a award, or rather I should say, excuse me, a nomination that comes through to the OAR board and it just doesn't complete muster for the board, I ask the board, what would you like me to convey to the nominator? And I write those notes down and I put it in a spreadsheet, and then I send each individual nominator a personal email, and I say, hi, just so you know, thank you for your submission of this nomination to the OAR Awards Board. The board has come back with these recommendations. I come back and keep it very positive and say that these are recommendations. They've come back with these recommendations, and we ask that you set some time aside if you want to discuss this, or at least give us this nomination back amended by X date. Failure to do so on your part will automatically make you ineligible for reconsideration and for this nomination to potentially move forward to NOAA. So we try to keep it very upbeat, very positive, and people will call me. They'll set some time aside, they'll set a meeting, and then they'll ask me to come to their individual awards board and we'll talk about it. And they'll say, I really don't get what this means. And so I'll go back as a liaison between them. And I think an awards POC definitely should be able to do that. Go back between the board again and says, hey, they have some clarifying questions. I'm not actually understanding exactly what you wanted to convey, but here's an opportunity for us to, demystify, be clean, clear, and concise about what we're trying to convey to them. And the whole goal is no one doesn't want to send out as many nominations as they can to NOAA. They want all of their nominations to go forward. So next question, Katie.
Awesome. Can nominators ask nominees for help on drafting nominations?
Sure.
Yeah. Definitely. I think you should ask the nominees, because like, again, I said, it's not esoteric, right? It's a great privilege for someone to say, I'm nominating you for Employee of the Year. Here's what I got. What do you think? Well, I may add 5 or 6 more things, because Darryl's reminded me and said, don't forget you did these things too. So that really gives that nomination teeth, and it gains the traction.
And sometimes this may sound bad, but sometimes I've learned here that they like to keep it a secret that you're nominating for something. No, that person or that group probably has more information on it. So, ask them. It won't hurt. But in essence, it's also letting them know, it's like, hey, look, I know your work is good. I really want to nominate you this, but I need some help to make sure I understand what these particular parts are. Is there a way you can explain this in shorter terms? Believe me, by you just even asking for their input really helps with the morale, and especially it shows them that you do care.
Awesome. Next question. Can you submit the same activity for multiple awards, gold, silver, bronze, or different milestones of the activity towards in awards in subsequent years?
Okay, that's a tricky question, but that's a good one. All right. It has actually a double-edged sword of yes and no. You are looking at, like you said, the initial part of the nomination or the award. Okay, you know, it was groundbreaking work, we got this done, and it was done, you know, 6 months ahead of time. So, you know, that's just, we really want to make sure that we get them the award for this. That's fine. 2 years later, you know, you've gotten your data about this particular project. At this point in time, it's at another stage. Do you want to nominate it for it? Yes, you can. It's not necessarily the same work, but however, you're going through and you're gathering everything. And then you could get to the final thing, and from the final impact of this, that all that work that you've done, you've noticed that it did this, it saved the government millions of dollars, and now it's used on a commercial level, which has definitely affected DOC's strategic plan. There's nothing wrong with that, because at that point, it's at 3 different phases. Even though it may be the same project, it's not the same project at the same time.
Good to
Now,
know.
but the thing is, you cannot submit that same project for all the categories at the same time. No, you can't do that. So you can do, and one of the questions I got is like, well, we know just in case it doesn't make it for the, we don't know if it's going to make it for the bronze, but we want to submit it for the administrator. So we'll submit it for the bronze and administrator at the same time. I wouldn't recommend that. I would, and also the results come out different times anyway. So just wait. You may have more that you want to actually put into it if you do decide to submit it for something, for another one. If it doesn't win for the bronze, then yeah, it is eligible. But I wouldn't try to submit them at the same time.
Good to know. Last question, I think we can grab in the waning minutes here. Is there a website or a database where they can search for past awards to complete the past awards section at the top of the nomination form?
Right now, we're in the process of rebuilding, because we've moved a lot of in transition over to our new website. So we're in the process of reestablishing all of that. Unfortunately, it's only going to go, I think it's only going to go back to maybe 2007 or 2008. If you've got anything prior to that, I honestly, I don't have access to that.
If you are in OAR and making that request, OAR, we actually keep copies of awards up into a certain number of years as well, sort of like the same repository that Darryl's created. And we keep demographic information on those awards as well. So if you're in OAR, we are keeping it, and I'm believing that a lot of other Align offices are in sync with keeping this information. So if someone requests, you know, could you give me a great award that won for administrators, I could quickly make a reference point to one that recently won in the last 3 years and send that to them. And I try to send at least 2 examples, you know, not sort of shutter a person into just one particular one. I try to send at least 2 examples of something in that particular category they're looking for.
Okay, and we are right up to time. We did have one last question. Those past 5 years awards review, is that for CIYA2 or time off, question mark? Karen, I'm not sure what you're trying to say.
She's talking about incentive awards.
No, ask the question again, please. I just want, I think I know who this is.
So those past 5 years awards review, is that for cash in your account too, or time off, question mark?
No, mainly what they're looking for is honor awards. The honor awards, not the cash in your account or things to that aspect. So it's a good question. It's a very plausible one, but it's the major ones that we're looking for, the administrative awards, or even if you've gotten you know, employee of the year, something like that. So some of the major bigger ones, but the cash in account ones really don't, you don't need to list those.
Okay, and the last, I'm going to grab one more question because it came up and it seems to be fairly easy to answer. Can former employees be nominated?
Former employees,
Perhaps like retirees, someone who just recently retired but maybe worked on the research.
Yeah, it all depends on the time period of the nomination and when they left the organization. So if you're nominating someone for a gold medal and they just left the organization, it takes that during that process. By the time they actually come to award, yes, they still can be included, but they have to be there when the research was done. And we're not talking if the research started 10 years ago. No, no, you can't. That's a little bit too far now.
And that's probably too indicative of retirees, people who may transfer to another agency. They go from NOAA to NIST or NOAA to NASA. So I that may be indicative of all of those things.
Awesome. Okay, we are just over the hour. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. We have recorded this and we will be sharing this and sharing the slides with the attendees. I'm assuming I'm going to get I do have the slides. What am I talking about? I have the slides. I will send them to everyone.
Right.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye. Take care.